Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here in Vilnius today in this very important event. Coming from DG Regio, obviously I present the regional part, but in fact this is a very good timing to talk about regional policy and smart specialization, because as you know very well, although we are in the final year of implementing current financial period, but at the same time for more than a year we've been now engaged with member states and regions on the preparations for the new financial period, which starts in 2014, so basically in a few months' time. And this is why in my speech I will focus on the future period. I will talk a little bit about the regional policy, how we see that in the next 7 years to come, what are the new angles or new orientations of this policy. Then I will explain a little bit about smart specialization, which I'm sure you know very well, this new concept we are going to implement in the next period in our programs from structural and investment funds. And also I will talk a little bit about the synergies between Horizon 2020 and our programs, and of course work with such platforms as ManuFuture. And in the very end, just a few words about the cross-border cooperation or territorial cooperation. So I want to start by saying that, of course, you very well know that regional dimension is key to Europe's growth agenda, and therefore also, of course, it deals with the re-industrialisation challenges in Europe. Europe has been in crisis for many years. It's coming out of it. We can see that the basic macroeconomic indicators in member states and regions are improving, but we also see that there's a lot of challenges that need to be addressed to ensure that growth comes back and also employment increases. And in this context, of course, structural funds play a key role. They've been an engine of growth in many regions and member states, and in some of them it is the only source of public investment for development. And of course, when we talk about crisis, we look about macroeconomic situation, we look on structural reforms in countries and regions. But now I think we are also focusing on growth, and this is part of a triangle where we come in with the structural and investment funds. So issues such as attractive conditions for doing business, fostering skills and innovation, supporting SME development, and fostering economic transformation are areas where we believe from our funds, regions and member states have a really important role to play. It is therefore very important to stress that, of course, this part of discussion should also needs to be pursued, particularly also in a view of the upcoming European elections, because sometimes we mostly focus on other things. So where does the EU regional policy stand? We believe that over the last decades we have developed a silent revolution by significantly increasing innovation investments, which is stimulated in the regions, in the beneficiaries, in countries and regions. The results from the policy are clear. If we look at 2000 and 2008, we can see that the convergence regions, which are the poorest regions in Europe, developed by 10% higher rate than EU 27 average. And this is an impressive degree of convergence, of course. The European Union is at the moment, as I said, engaging into a major reform of our policy to better synchronize regional policy with Europe 2020 targets, basically to ensure more prioritization and concentration, to also link it with the Europe economic governance process, which is structural reforms, country-specific recommendations, and to increase its impact in terms of adding growth and jobs in regions, which is the results orientation in the next programming period. We are trying to change the psychology of those who work with funds from pure transfers of money and only worrying about absorbing money to the results, to producing actual results on the ground. And that means, of course, targeted growth-enhancing investments so that they can get back on a higher growth trajectory. So in line with Europe 2020, we have now further increased the share of EU structural funds that goes towards stimulating innovation instead of simply financing basic infrastructure. We have earmarked a significant amount of budget for investments in research and innovation, SME competitiveness, energy efficiency and renewables, and ICT. And for these thematic objectives, 80% of funds in competitiveness regions should be spent, and 50% of funds in poorer regions for these thematic objectives. So that means that out of 322 billion euros for structural and investment funds that are to be deployed in the next programming period, about 100 billion euros will be invested into these fields. Well, to make sure that the scarce resources from the EU budget are productively used, we have set the smart specialization as an ex-ante conditionality for considering and starting financing in programs related to research and innovation. So smart specialization will determine to which fields this money will go, particularly, of course, if you look at thematic objective 1, as I said, research, development and innovation. So it will make sure that these investments will focus on limited number of well-identified priorities for knowledge-based investments and clusters instead of funding across the board with a watering can. Smart specialization aims at helping regions to fully tap their innovation potential and focus structural fund investments on economic transformation, macroeconomic competitiveness, including business support. So it's a powerful new policy approach that aims at kickstarting the microeconomic growth engine by concentrating resources on economic transformation and competitiveness. It brings research and innovation closer together and provides customized and region-specific support to different steps in the innovation value chain. The goal is that the strategy answers the needs of each territory by assessing in detail the entrepreneurial potential for knowledge-intensive growth in each territory and the barriers and opportunities at the system level, thus creation, absorption, and exploitation of knowledge. So national or regional innovation strategies for smart specialization, this is how they are called in our regulation, are currently about to be launched across Europe, mobilizing a large number of stakeholders and leveraging public and private funds for innovation. The development of such strategies is a mandatory precondition, as I said. It is a good opportunity to revise outdated funding policies and programs and orient future funding to real growth opportunities and the needs of businesses, particularly, of course, SMEs in a fast-changing global context. In fact, cohesion policy is now the single most important EU policy already in this period because about 70 billion were invested from ERDF and social fund into SME support. But as I said, we've seen also that the prioritization of this investment and value added has been questionable. And this is why, of course, this new approach is very important to be implemented. So for future, through smart specialization and by making SME competitiveness one of the 4 earmarked funding priorities, we expect member states and regions to deliver more and better targeted support to SME innovation. Now, this strategy development demands an entrepreneurial discovery process. This process of close business involvement and of tailoring innovation support to business needs and opportunities shall not, of course, end with the fulfillment of the conditionality, but continue to preserve commitment and valuable feedback for policy delivery and program implementation. Now, smart specialization also, of course, can help in industrial renewal by upgrading manufacturing and helping to translate scientific leadership into industrial advantages. Key enabling technologies, including advanced manufacturing, play a particular role in smart specialization as they enable diversification into higher value added and knowledge-intensive activities, and they are catalysts for industrial renewal and SME competitiveness. And this is why we have included support to CAT as priority for future funding in our ERDF regulation. It is, if you read the regulation in thematic objective 1. Now, in addition to enable support to advance manufacturing across the board, and not only in the smart specialization areas, support to the creation and extension of advanced capacities for product and service development has been included also under the thematic objective number 3, SME competitiveness. The extent to which these possibilities will be used, of course, depends ultimately on the choices in the member states and regions as expressed in their smart specialization strategies and then in concrete foreseen investment into our operational programs. With the smart specialization conditionality, we can only show the way forward and demand that certain process and evidence-based rigor is used to set the priorities and measures most appropriate to the specific place-based challenges. Ultimately, we know that the proof of the pudding, of course, is in the eating. So it will be crucial how these strategies are further concretely implemented, monitored, and followed up, and in which way it will also help to further strengthen capacities, particularly in those member states to which most of the money goes and which mostly in our funds are the biggest receivers. They are also pretty low on innovation scoreboards. What we can say from our engagement with member states at the moment, we see real effort to improve policy coordination, the involvement of stakeholders at member state regional level, and there is a huge work towards integrated approaches, allowing for better synergy between different funding sources. But at the same time, we also see that there is a lot of room for improvement, not only in the priority setting and concentration, but also in developing more focused and intelligent, concrete sets of measures, which then would be included into our operational programs. We know that this is not trivial. This asks for significant strategic and also administrative capacity, but it is part of European regional policy to foster this capacity. One of the support measures we have started 2 years ago that provides expert advice, policy learning, peer review activities for smart specialization strategy development. It is the platform in Seville, and currently we have 13 EU regions, 19 member states, and 10 member states at national level working with us through this platform. Now, smart specialization, of course, can also promote synergies between the relevant European funding instruments, and I think the topic of this conference is to look at Horizon 2020. Now, we try to ensure that in the future programming period, these synergies between the two funding instruments, the European Structural Investment Funds and Horizon 2020, are ensured and are possible. Besides getting more strategic direction and focus on innovation opportunities, of course, this synergies is very, very important issue. So more synergies and complementarities in policy making, not least between research, industrial policy, and regional policy, has become a necessity in the face of different global developments, and of course, in a current situation where Europe is still struggling with public budget cuts. Leveraging synergies between the relevant European funding instruments is very important in this respect, and of course, we see also that smart specialization can play a role there. And it's also mentioned in our communication on Innovation Union. Now, also, discussions between the Parliament and Council made it clear that this approach is not simply nice to have, but this needs to be implemented to get optimal results and impact. So we are taking it very seriously. First of all, by making smart specialization as a benchmark for our policy, and also, of course, by ensuring that also we align a little bit the eligibility rules for both instruments. So first of all, this means that the authorities involved in designing structural fund operational programs have to cooperate together with authorities and bodies involved in designing research policies. While structural funds are not meant to fund fundamental research, It does allow us to invest in the research infrastructure and into more applied research projects to the benefit of the regional economy. So the first element of synergy is to strengthen and develop the excellence around the smart specialization areas in each region, the so-called staircase of excellence at the upstream part of the innovation value chain. Then the second level of synergy is at the downstream part, where our funds can help to bridge the so-called valley of death from research to market, supporting the technology absorption of companies, such as through advanced manufacturing, and fund all kinds of industrial pilot projects and the bringing to market new services and products. Apart from these strategic synergies, there are also concrete co-investment synergies possible now at project level. To facilitate these, we've included in our funding rules, in the structural funds, as well as in Horizon 2020, the possibility to fund projects from 2 different EU grants, which was not possible in this funding period. Nevertheless, I still have to stress that, of course, we have to avoid double funding, double financing. We have to avoid fraud and misuse of European funds, and therefore our preferred approach would still be sequential projects. So building on the project that you have in structural funds and then going to Horizon 20 or vice versa, as I explained just before, rather than mixing it up in one project. But nevertheless, it will be also possible in the next programming period. So to provide more practical guidance, we are about to publish a guide that explores different practical scenarios for combining Horizon 2020 and structural funds. The main message of this new guide is that to succeed, both the research, Horizon 2020 community, and the cohesion or regional policy community will need to change old habits, listen to each other, and synchronize their programs and implementation modes. So again, more cooperation will be needed. However, we cannot stop there. To achieve more synergies across the board, it is crucial that all stakeholders in the field, be it at policy or implementation level, also align their strategies, roadmaps, actions, and explore co-investment opportunities. By having each member state and region to define their priority areas for knowledge-based investments, we are opening up important opportunities in the next period for joining forces. There are good examples already, and such is the work of this platform, ManuFuture, because as I understand, it has been working for several years on the alignment and coordination between EU and national and regional programs and initiatives. Now, it is important that you continue and activate your work, and I know that you've been engaged through your national and regional platforms with structural funds managing authorities, which are responsible for defining smart specialization strategies and operational programs, that you are engaged with them in the programming exercise for the next programming period. It is precisely this kind of coordination and cooperation that we need to see more. It is important to know that in this context, of course, while the smart specialization strategies will have orientation and steering function, nevertheless, the ERDF innovation investments will be implemented through concrete national and regional programs, and we foresee more than 350 programs over Europe in the next programming period. So in these operational programs, the broad action lines and project selection criteria will be defined, and this is what we have to work on. Of course, this means that also the European Commission will have a word to say, because all the programs, as usually, will be approved by us. Therefore, we are, of course, engaged with member states already in this exercise. Now, we are also organizing an event, a high-level event on smart specialization on November 8 in Brussels, to which you all are kindly invited. This will be a high-level event with Mr. Van Rompuy, our commissioner, research commissioner, and the European Parliament. So there will be workshops to explore further this topic. Now let me finish by saying that also in a cohesion policy, we are setting very strong incentives for cross-border and transnational cooperation on smart specialization areas. As you know, we have this separate part, European territorial cooperation, under which we fund transnational, interregional and cross-border programs. It's about 11 billion. It's not a large part of the funds, but still it's a very important part because it directly works with cooperation between different member states and regions. There is a lot of opportunities there. Well, first of all, there is a lot of opportunities also in mainstream programs because member states and regions can spend up to 15% of their funds outside their program area if it is the benefit of their territory. And also every operational program shall set out its arrangements for interregional transnational actions with beneficiaries located in at least one other member state. So we encourage member states to make full use of this. In addition, we will be looking at possibilities to reflect the macro-regional approach in mainstream programs, and I'm happy to hear from a Lithuanian minister that there is a close cooperation between the 3 Baltic countries ongoing in the field of innovation. This is exactly what we would like to see, that when you design projects, I mean basically programs and project selection criteria in your mainstream programs, you look a little bit further and you also include possibility to fund transnational projects. And finally, also, of course, the Interreg programs, cross-border programs, they also have to be steered towards more cooperation in the field of innovation and particularly smart specialization. There are good examples of concrete cooperation, such as, for example, Baltic Sea Manufacturing Belt Initiative and so on. So all I want to say in the end is this is a very important period in time. We are currently engaged with all member states in negotiations, informal negotiations on the partnership agreements. For 14 countries, we will be providing our first observations, but we've had informal dialogues since already a year or so. We've received first operational programs from the Baltic countries, from Nordic countries, but for the next 6 to 9 months, the aim is to approve all partnership agreements and operational programs for all European structural and investment funds. This is a good timing, I think, to have this conference, and hope to see all of you also on our Smart Specialization conference in Brussels. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Do you want me, I mean, if somebody has questions.
We have a knowledge about the view to regional policy and smart specialization, and one question we have time to answer it. Please.
Industry from Europe was moved to Asia, not because that it was not initiative or competitive. It's good that we are looking for new opportunities to develop industry's potential. We are looking to innovation and new strategies, but we can't ignore all possible ways and means. I would like to mention intellectual property rights in industry, on-fire competitiveness, and another. What we can do together that avoid former our no effective, and I can say bad experience in former 15, maybe yes. Thank you.
I did not understand the question, I'm sorry.
Okay, I think we could explain it after this session in bilateral contacts.
European industry was no less competitive in former 15 years, in no less initiative. It means it's no reason why industry from Europe came to Asia. What we are now planning to do something and again in direction in what no reasonable, but we must do another actions.
No, but I mean, when I talk about smart specialization, I'm not talking about something new, something that came out of the sky again, something that, we want to again impose on member states or anything. This is based on a reality. We've looked at the programs that were run in member states and regions on innovation and SME support. And unfortunately, we can say that the measures designed there had absolutely no direction. So they were funding across the board without prioritization. So what we said then to member states and regions, go sit together, invite your industry, invite your SMEs, invite your research world on the regional level or on a national level, together with your authorities, and come back to us and say, what is your strengths on which you will build and which you also then want to be funded from European structural investment funds. So in fact, this was an attempt to also look at what industries you have in regions and on which you can maybe build, not to let them go to China, but to support them more to reach a new level, because this is exactly what smart specialization is about. It's nothing new. It's basically just an attempt to make everybody work together and come up with a joint plan so that we can fund them.